Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Good to go. Yeah, no problem. So I'll jump in a little bit more about who I am. The plan for today, again, is about that player mindset. And in going through and talk with AP a little bit, really wanted to have it on that player mindset. Being a champion, having that champion mindset. So I tried to think about what were kind of the key points. So I broke it down in an ABC kind of aspect, and it might sound confusing, but you'll see it's a lot simpler. And the biggest thing I want each and every single one of you to be able to think about today with player mindset, and ask yourself this question multiple times, and not just during the presentation, but after: are you all in? And not just in hockey and in your preparation and in your performance, but in your life. Are you all in school? Are you all in relationships? Are you all in with your family members? And that's an important aspect for us as human beings. First and foremost is that we need to be all in, and in everything that we do, if we want to get the most out of it and we want to accomplish our goals or accomplish our dreams, or see things get better, or more developed, then we need to be all in. And it's not this kind of 50-50, and one day it's 80-20, the next day it's 30-70. You have to find the way to be able to be all in, and that's some things that we're going to talk about today. Steps moving forward I have here. So throughout the presentation, I have strategies put in place. So I'll say, this is a great strategy. And a lot of the times today, I'm going to say, if there's one thing that you're going to take from this presentation, take this. But it's just some things that I picked up along the way, and some things that might be able to help. At the end, I just have a best advice, and then we're going to leave a bit of time for questions. So it might seem like there's a lot of information, and trust me, once I get started on kind of this kind of stuff, it seems like it just rolls and rolls and rolls. But the biggest thing is just find little pieces that work for you. If you have a question during the presentation, don't hesitate to raise your hand or throw it in the chat. If things are getting a little bit heavy, we can take a quick, couple of second, a minute break. If someone has a question or a comment, or an example even, don't hesitate, because I want to make sure that each and every single one of you are able to get the most out of this. And we're going to aim to be around 30 minutes, and just to roll through and to include a couple of questions at the end. So don't hesitate again to be able to ask during, and to cut me off. I don't mind that at all. I love having conversation with the players. So just let me know. So as AP said, in terms of playing, I played in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League for 4 years. I played a year of AUS at Dalhousie, and with a lot of concussions, that kind of cut my playing career short. I was able to participate in a couple international tournaments, and playing with ball hockey as well. As much as ball hockey is more of a fun game, you really learn a lot that can translate over into ice hockey. So that really helped me a lot, and played with AP a few times as well with ball hockey, which was a lot of fun. Coaching education right now, lucky enough, I was able to start off in the senior league back home, coaching the Northeast Eagles. They're Northeast now, but they're Torbay when I was coming through. And that jumped me into the major midget league that's back home, or I guess the under 18 league back home. And coached there for 3 years before moving to Rouyn-Noranda. This is my second year, and I was lucky enough the past 2 years to be involved in Hockey Canada at the under 17 program. So really continuing to move forward in the coaching aspects. Personally wise, I had personal education here. And you see, for me, I love putting education and not just experience, because education, there's a bit of a difference between education and experience. For me, is because experience, people just say they experienced this. But for me, education means you experienced it, but you also learned something to move forward with. So that's why I always like to put down education. So the personal aspects was more personal, especially going through with concussion problems or issues, that I had a lot of mental health aspects that really affected me, and it affected me for a long time. So I learned a lot from those darker times, I like to say, but I learned a lot from them, which has helped me being able to push through, and help me in certain situations, and help me become more resilient in difficult situations. And resilience is going to be an aspect that we'll talk about in a little bit. And in school, I have my bachelor degree, my major in psychology, with my master's in psychology as well, which has really helped piece everything together. And the biggest reason why I like to be able to talk about all this education is so that each of you understand that I've either experienced this or I've learned about it, but I've had 4 different dimensions of my life in which these things have come up. It's not just, I read about it in a book and I'm saying it to you just secondhand like that. It's either I've lived it, learned about it, or whatnot. So I just want each of you to have an understanding that I've thought about these aspects in 4 different ways, that might be able to help you move forward in your many different aspects of your game and your life. So here's how I broke it down in player mindset. So A, B, C. So each one is an A word, a B word, and a C word. So the first word is adaptability. Adaptability is so important. You have to roll with the punches. You have to understand what you can and cannot control. And it's so important for these days now with COVID. And COVID changes a lot of things. Am I playing games this weekend? Am I not playing games? Are things going to get shut down? Am I going to be able to do this? What's school going to be like? Is it only by distance? Okay, you have to adapt. And the champion player mindset, they adapt and they find ways to adapt. And even if it takes a little bit longer the first time through to adapt, you learn for that second time, and that adaptability time really changes and it shortens. So it's very important for each of you to understand that adaptability is so key. And under adaptability, there's daily habits and actions. There's preparation and debrief, controlling distractions, maintaining focus. And the last one there, action card, is a really great strategy that each of you can use. And it's very simple and can help in all aspects of your life. But for daily habits and actions, you have to ask yourself, are your goals process or outcome based? So adaptability, making sure that process-based goals. So what that means is you're in full control of that goal. For instance, you might have a goal of a game to have 2 goals, but is that technically fully in your control? Technically not, because the other team's goalie could be on fire. You might have broken a couple of sticks. You may not have the opportunities because, maybe line mates, or maybe you're not having the top aspect of your game. Maybe the ref took your goal and gave it to somebody else, or whatever it might be. But the most important thing is to have your goals based in process. So aspects like, all right, skate as hard as I can to the bench for change ups. That's what I can control. All right, making sure that I get the puck, in a certain situation, or being able to be prepared for a certain system play or anything like that, like focus wise. So it's important to have those goals process based. And then a couple of little questions that we always ask our players up in Quebec. Are you better today than yesterday? So being able to ask about your habits and actions, that are you setting yourself up for a better tomorrow because of what you're doing today? And it's just kind of looking at yourself in a 3-day span, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and not looking too much further than that, because if you look too far in the past or too far in the future, you're going to lose sight of the present moment. And that's something that really is going to affect you overall and affect your mindset. So it's important to think of it in a 3-day span. And then this is something that even for myself, I did a lot when I was a player. Is like, well, I'm not going to do it today, I'll just do it tomorrow. But why do something tomorrow when you can do it today? And why not do it again tomorrow when you can do it today? And that's something so important that a champion mind has, is that they have that present mindset. They want to do everything as quickly as they can and efficiently as they can. They don't want to wait. They're hungry to be able to do it. They're all in to do it. And that's based on their daily habits and actions. You talk about having pro habits and pro actions. So that's something important to be able to really consider and think about. So going in further into adaptability, preparation and debrief. You have to be able to self-evaluate that. If your preparation is not where it needs to be, you need to honestly self-evaluate to say, okay, well, I need to prepare more, or maybe I need to prepare less. And then debrief to be able to say, okay, after a game, how was my preparation? How was my performance? Well, it wasn't the best here, or it wasn't the best there. Okay, what can I do to be able to get it up to this aspect? And that's where that adaptability comes in, that you have to adapt. You can't be concrete and set in your ways. You have to adapt, and again, roll with the punches and learn to change. And make small changes will make a big difference in the overall picture. Talk about controlling distractions and maintaining focus. So your attention. Right now, if some of you are on your phone, then you're not going to get the most out of this than the person who might be taking a couple little notes for themselves. And the biggest thing I always like to say to our players is your eyes. Where are your eyes? So that if a guy is on the bench for us, and he's looking down, or he's looking at the bottles, or he's anything like that, then he's not going to be fully focused on what he needs to focus in on. And that's really the game at hand. So being able to focus in on your eyes. And right now, that if I want to make sure that I'm staying focused and I'm really sticking to my plan that I want for this presentation, I'm not going to be looking at the TV right now and my attention is split or anything like that. I'm going to have my eyes focused on the screen, and that's going to lead to being able to maintain that focus. And being able to ask yourself what's important next, or what's important now. And that's the WIN acronym there. And just being able to learn from a situation and then being able to learn and move past it by saying, what's important now? It's that next shift, that next play. Okay, if you did bad on a test, okay, you learn from it. What do I need to do in my preparation, my self-evaluation? Okay, well, I need to study more. It's like, okay, well, what's important now? Well, maybe the next assignment or the next test, not the one that's already happened. And that comes into a pre-game or pre-test, pre-exam, preschool practice routine. So it's important to be able to think about your routine and have one set and one that works for you best individually and not for someone else, but what works best for you individually. And the last piece of adaptability is the action card. So this helps in your debrief, in your self-evaluation, and being able to say, okay, well, was I missing something in my preparation, in my performance? Well, maybe I need to start to do something more. So maybe you show up to the rink a little bit later than what you should. So maybe instead of going to the rink 45 minutes before the game, you want to go an hour. Then I will start to go to the rink an hour before the game. I will stop. Maybe you're having a bag of candy before the game, or you're drinking a bottle of pop or something like that. Then it's not healthy in your performance. Or maybe you're going out having a party the night before and it's not healthy in your practice. Then I will stop. And that's important to be able to be honest in your evaluation for those things. And it's small changes, but it leads to a big overall change in your game and your life. And then I will continue. Did something work really well for you? Okay, well, maybe all right, it's the second game after you put in the change in time, you went to the rink, and that hour is really working well for you. Then you'll say, I will continue to go to the rink an hour before the game. But the preparation and debrief is an ever-changing, adaptable process that each of you have to be honest in your self-evaluation for yourself so that you're able to really continue to roll and continue to change and continue to improve and develop. So jumping into B for belief, just wondering if anybody has any questions right now. Hope it's not going too fast for everybody or everybody's following along fine. But if anybody has anything, can give it just a couple of quick seconds there just to be able to catch up, catch your breath and whatnot.
No, it's I think there's some really good points here, Brad. I like what you're discussing here, especially when you're talking about just the belief in yourself. That's one thing I find girls versus guys. Guys, the confidence level tends to be a little bit higher in generalities. It's just that swagger kind of deal. I find girls are a little bit less confident themselves, especially in their abilities. And then you're getting into that subconscious, I'm thinking about this versus I'm just going to do it and just rely on my talent. And I believe in myself that I can make that pass or I can make that play. You're thinking, well, boy, I might not be able to make that play. You got to try to keep those negative thoughts away.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly something that we're going to jump into this next section for sure. And the biggest aspect, and it's been so far so long in hockey, is the difference between men's and women's hockey. But at the end of the day, there's great men's hockey players and there's great women hockey players, and there always will be, no matter what the style of play is, no matter the level of play. All you girls can play with anybody, and you should believe that on a day-to-day basis. And I truly believe in that. And I hope each of you, by the end of this belief section, will have a couple of strategies to be able to help with that belief and that confidence aspect. So to jump into it, for belief, the biggest thing for me is being able to have a present mindset, confidence, the 3 A's, which we'll jump into, and having that resilience piece. And if you have few of those aspects, then you're going to have a strong belief in yourself and a strong self-confidence. And that's really going to help you push forward. And again, like I'll say in hockey, but this is all about life too, about school and about day-to-day things. So you see here for present mindset that the preparation and debrief aspect is still there because it's so important. You have to put these things in your preparation, these skills and strategies. You hear the saying, you can't flick it on and off like a light switch. That for these mental skills, you have to practice them. You have to use them in your practice. You have to do them the night before a game. You have to do them before the exam. So that way, when you're in the performance phase, that these things are much more automatic. So in the present mindset, you look at some things like self-talk and visualization. So self-talk, if you're being positive with yourself, that leads to a strong belief. If you're visualizing doing things the right way, making that strong tape to tape pass, burying that goal, having a good back check, whatever it might be, that's going to, again, lead to a strong belief. And that's so important that each of you are in full control over, is that if you're able to do these things, if you're able to have positive self-talk, or if you're able to have more adaptive self-talk in the sense that, okay, well, I'm starting to feel negative here, I can shift it and use a strategy to change it to positive. Same with visualization. Then that's more adaptive, and you're going to see yourself become more resilient. And talk a little bit about the impact of the past and future. That, okay, you might think a little bit about the past, about making a mistake, or the future, you're gripping your stick really tight, you need to do something, something needs to happen, you're down by a goal, or if I don't do well on that next exam. But you can't lose sight of that present moment, because you have to set yourself up for a better tomorrow with your present actions. And that's such an important aspect, that your belief can't change based on things that haven't happened or have already happened, because you're still, whatever kind of strengths and qualities you have as a hockey player or as a person, those don't change because of your overall experience. Those change because of your mindset. If you believe that you're a great skater, you're going to be a great skater, because you're going to work on it. You're going to continue to try to improve on it, and you're going to want to use it as much as you can because you believe in it. And that's so important, to be able to practice and then implement it in your performance. So then you look at confidence is key. Confidence is a huge aspect. And for me, going up through as a player, I always thought, well, you know what, the coach isn't playing me, my confidence is really low because of that. And as I got older and as I started to coach and as I started to go to school a bit more, is that confidence is something that's always in your control. And yes, of course, it helps if you're playing, if you have 45-minute games, that if you're playing 30 minutes, then of course your confidence is going to be stronger. But the biggest thing is that even if you're playing 5 minutes, I mean, you look at Dawson Mercer with the World Juniors, the first game, he had the second lowest ice time on the team and he had 4 points. So, you know what, the biggest thing is that your skills and qualities and strengths don't change based on what other people have control on. So for me as a coach, that if I'm saying to a player, well, you know what, you're still a great skater, you're still a great passer, even though you're playing maybe 5 minutes in the game, that doesn't change, because those are the things you're in control over. Your time on ice, you're not in control over, your coach is. Yes, of course, if you're doing things the right way and you're playing well, then the coach tends to give a bit more ice time. But at the end of the day, you can't control that. So you have to use the self-talk, the visualization, the recognition of your skills and strengths, and being able to bring that into your game and your life. And that's going to be your confidence. And if something happens that falters, or you start to feel a little bit weaker in that area, maybe you made a mistake, then you have to remind yourself of your strengths and qualities. And when you remind yourself, you're taking that negative, you're adapting it into a positive, and your confidence will jump back up, because you're able to do these things. And believe that, each and every single one of you, believe that you're putting the work in, believe that you're able to do these things, and your game will skyrocket. And the 3 A's here just talk about attitude, actions, and abilities, and which is the most important order to you. And I'll leave that just kind of for right now. And I'm going to come back into the best advice piece at the end with these 3 A's. But just to kind of have you think about, in your personal life or your hockey, what's most important to you? Is it your attitude? Is it your daily actions? Or is your on ice, off ice abilities? And I think that's something that each of you can really think about just for a little bit, and we'll come back to it at the end. And for all these things, it builds resilience. So resilience is ultimately the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or adversity. And you really see that in strong champion players, that they're able to recover quickly from adversity. And you look at the World Junior team last year, in which they had a bit of adversity with a couple of injuries. They got pounded by Russia in the round robin, and they end up winning. And they went down in the championship game too, and they end up winning. So it's those champion player mindsets that really help. And important to be able to have that debrief, to be able to ask, are we tougher or stronger after an experience? What did we learn for our next experience? Are we better prepared for the future? Do you feel more or less confident? How come? And it's important to be able to ask that why for each of you. Find that purpose. You have to ask why, because if you don't ask why, then you're not going to really understand how a certain experience is going to be able to help you in the future. Or if you're not sure why, then you might need to be able to help or find help, find support, be able to talk to someone about it. And that's so important. And that's something I learned not only as a player, but as a person, that the more I can be a support for someone else, the more they can be a support for me. The more I can talk about things, the more other people will talk with me. The more I can be positive with people, the more they can be positive with me. And the more I ask why, the more I'm going to find purpose. So that's something very important for each of you, is don't be afraid to ask why. And I think that's a big difference, again, in a player's mindset, that if you don't know why you're doing something, if you don't know why you're working on a certain edge or a certain skill, ask why. Once you put that purpose to things, you're more quicker to really adapt and develop. So jumping into the last one, and C is commitment. So again, we'll do the same thing after what we did after adaptability. Just give it a couple of seconds. If if AP has a couple comments, or I see Cavi's on now, if Cavi wants to have a couple comments or whatnot, or if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in now, or if you want to save them to the end, then feel free then as well.
Don't give Cavi that in to talk. I mean, we could be here till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I mean.
Oh, I'm only here for a quick little bit, but Brad, thanks for coming in and talking to the group. Just got out of church, and yeah, no, Brad, the one thing that you mentioned there, like for me, the 3 A's, attitude leads to the other 2 A's for me. And I feel like if you have a great attitude, it'll lead to taking constructive criticism better from the coaches, and it'll lead into everything else that comes to being an athlete, not only an athlete, but just in everyday life. So like, I love that part of the presentation so far.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something that we're definitely going to touch on a little bit later. And it's important for the players to really understand that, and also for coaches too, to be able to recognize what's important to them, so that they're able to communicate that to players as well. So we'll jump in, no questions. So we'll jump into the last one, is commitment. So the way I have commitment broken down is that this is a space shuttle discovery, and this is from 1986. And I hope the video will work, but I'm just going to let it play quickly here, and hopefully again it works.
Bitter cold, but sparkling
and it's only a minute long.
Here are the last seconds of the countdown.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
All the communications between the shuttle and mission control indicated
AP, can you hear it?
going fine. There was a sense of relief that the much delayed flight was finally underway.
Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%. Challenger, go at throttle up. Challenger, go at throttle up.
It happened just over 1 minute into flight.
1 minute, 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
From mission control, silence. Then the bland, chilling report.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded. Flight director confirms that. We are looking at checking with the recovery forces to see what can be done at this point.
Slow motion.
So ultimately, I'll pause it there. So we used this example earlier on in the year in Rouyn-Noranda because we have a very young team, and we were talking about role acceptance and commitment. And that was a very important aspect for us, is to be able to get our guys to understand, yes, a space shuttle exploding, it might seem, dramatic and drastic, but you're going to see why we use this example, because the explosion of the shuttle began after an O-ring seal. It wasn't ultimately placed right. So what happened was the external fuel tank had a lot of pressure, and the space shuttle exploded. So here is what the O-ring looks like. So overall, that space shuttle cost $3.5 billion. And you can imagine back in the 80s that is an absolute ton of money. And nowadays, it's not as much as it would be back then. But prior to liftoff, the NASA managers had failed to check the status of the ring. And the cost of that ring was 25 cents. So it was 25 cents, and they didn't check that little tiny O-ring, and it led to that explosion. And for us, the biggest thing we wanted to be able to relay to our players is that every single role, every single aspect of your life, every single aspect of your work, your job, your game, you have to commit to. And you have to make sure that you're never too big to do the small things. Something that only cost 25 cents caused the explosion of something that cost 3.5 billion and lives lost. And again, it might seem drastic and dramatic, but it's such an important just example of that every action is valuable. Every action that you do in your performance, every action that you do in your day-to-day life and habits wise is valuable. And you may not see the immediate payback or cost of it right then and there, but eventually over time, you're going to see that certain things start to add up for the positive or negative, and that every piece is valuable. That for you yourself, every quality that you have, every action that you take is extremely valuable. So it's important to really think about that nothing is ever too small to do. And if you're very good at doing the small things, then you're going to see a very, very positive, huge development increase for yourself. And that's something that coaches, and I'm sure AP and Cavi say a lot, is, the small details, the little details, and they pay off huge in the end. So just the last little thing with commitment is being humble. You have to be humble, never too big to do the small things, and learn to accept and control what you can control. Be disciplined, not just in hockey, but in everyday life and in school as well. And to be humble, that requires discipline. Discipline day in, day out in your habits and your actions. And have character. Character wins over talent, and it begins with being humble. Separate your feelings. Don't let your feelings distract you from what you have to do. So if you feel like something might cause a little bit of pain mentally or physically, if you feel like there's something that you may not fully want to do, then you need to separate those feelings, because overall, if you have that champion mindset, you have to put your feelings to the side and you have to do what you have to do. You have to do those actions on a daily basis in order to get better. That it's easy to do things once. It's that much tougher to do things day after day after day. And that's where you have to separate your feelings and be mentally tough. Be consistent with a narrow focus. If you want more, you're going to do more. So that's the commitment aspect. And we're just jumping to kind of the best advice. And this is why I like to do a mini introduction at the beginning, because again, this takes everything that I've learned so far and everything hockey and life related, that preparation is key. If you're not prepared, you're not going to succeed. And that's something very important for each of you to understand, is that you need to be prepared in everything that you do. And your preparation level is going to differ between each and every single one of you. But the most important aspect is that if you're prepared the way you need to prepare, you will have success. You need to make sure that you have a balance of physical, mental, and technical preparation. So the technical, I put in kind of tactical, like skill development and team play and stuff like that. But the physical and mental aspects that you have to be in control over, your mental skills work, your preparation and your focus, your physical preparation in terms of your workouts and your activations and your cool downs. So that's an important aspect. Be a sponge. So being a sponge by learning something new every day. And if you learn one new thing a day, you look at the end of the week, that's 7 new things. End of 4 weeks, that's 28. End of 8 weeks, 56. So, you go on and you go on and you go on. Look at how much that is at the end of just 1 year, all the new things that you learn. And it can be anything related to life, school, hockey, whatever it might be. But that's going to be something very important, that if you just take one little bit of information and you learn it that day, then over time, that's going to add up to be a monumental, vast library of new knowledge. So be a sponge, learn something new every day, and you don't need to overload yourself with information. And that's why I said to you at the start of the presentation as well, is that you don't need to learn everything in this presentation. Just take one thing from it that's going to work best for you in your game and in your life. And be honest with yourself. That's very important. If you're not honest with yourself in your debrief of your performance and preparation, you're not going to get better. There's no easy way for me to say that, but if you're not honest with yourself, you're not going to get better. And don't be too critical on yourself either. You have to find that healthy balance, but it's important to be honest with yourself and ask yourself ultimately, did I do things the right way? Did I work as hard as I possibly could work? And that's even something now that we talk to 20-year-olds on a daily basis in Quebec and say, how do you think you played? Oh, good. I did this. It's like, no, like, are you telling me this is your honest evaluation of yourself right now? And then you start to ask a couple more questions about it, and then they're finally like, oh yeah, well, I need to work on this, Like, okay, well, this is something the individual player has to get better at if they want to develop. So we come back to the 3 A's: abilities, actions, and attitude. And Coach Cavi had it right on the nail on the head, is that attitude is first and foremost the most important. That for us, even from a coaching aspect, that if we have someone who has great abilities and who does things, somewhat in good ways on a day-to-day basis with their actions, but they don't have a good attitude, then we don't want them. We want good people with good attitudes first and foremost. We want that good people aspect. And then we want people with good actions. And then from there, if they have good abilities, that's a huge bonus. But we know we can teach them the abilities, and it's a bit tougher to teach the actions on a day-to-day basis, but we're able to. But it's extremely tough to teach the attitude aspect. So it's important for each of you to really think about what's most important to you. And if it's the abilities or actions aspect, then it's important to be able to look yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself if you have the necessary attitude to get what you're looking for. And the last piece I'll leave you with is don't take anything for granted. And this ties in adaptability, it ties in belief, and it ties in commitment and that player champion mindset that you get to versus you have to. And I listened to Dallas Aikens. He's the head coach of the Anaheim Ducks, and he was talking about being at an NFL training camp, and all the players would come to the strength conditioning coaches or the coaches or video or anything like that. And every single time they came up to like, hey, coach, what time do I get to come train today? What time do I get to do video today? So finally the coach in Anaheim's like, what the hell is going on? What's all this get to stuff? What's that all about? So it's like, we're not a have to team. None of our players have to do these things. They're choosing to do these things. So they get to do these things. So it's a privilege. They don't take these things for granted. They get to do these things on a daily basis. And that's the same for each and every single one of you. If you don't have to do these things, you have to ask yourself if you fully want to, and then you get to do these things. And when you have that mindset, you're going to develop into an incredible player, an incredible person. You're going to make the most out of everything in the moment, and eventually you'll be that champion. So again, want to thank AP and VHG for having me on today. I'll open it up to any kind of questions and comments. And if you don't feel comfortable in asking any kind of questions or have any kind of comments here, AP and Cavi have my contact info, and more than welcome to send something off to me. I'm always there for all the players back home. So again, thanks for having me. Thanks for listening. I hope each of you got something out of it, and we'll turn it over to the boys for any questions.
Cavi, are you there, Cavi?
No, Brad, it's great to see where you've been from the time you coached me down in Jack Byrne Arena. So like your future's very bright. And I love how you just took some time to talk about the finer details on the mental side. It's not talked about enough. And really, we're really privileged and thankful for you to come in to talk about it with our group.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really, really appreciative to be here, and hopefully pass along some form of information, education, and go from there.
And just another little thing, Brad, I said to Brad, this is just about giving back. I said to Brad, well, how much am I going to pay you? I'll pay you right away. And he said, well, no, I'd rather you donate to a food bank. So it just goes to show the mindset. That's just, success. And then you give back to the people that have helped you. So that's just something that Brad wanted. So we will be contributing some financial and some food to a food bank. I haven't decided I haven't done that actual work yet. But that being said, the next couple of days over the holidays, we'll be making a sizable donation on Brad's behalf, and we'll make sure we put some of that stuff on social media as well. So thank you very much, Brad, on behalf of VHG, Ryan, myself, Cavi, my brother's not here today, and all the girls. This is fantastic stuff. Very, very important side of the game is confidence, mental preparation, and having someone with your experience and just having a friend here to be able to do this with over the holidays during a pandemic is fantastic. So thank you very much. And we'll do something probably as a group on the side, just a little thank you for you as well.
No, absolutely. I appreciate it. So thanks very much for having me. And girls, if you have any questions further on in the next couple of days or month or whatever, just let the guys know and I'll be happy to answer them anytime, any day.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Brad.